All India Radio. Regional News Unit of All India Radio Chennai presents an overview on the concept of holistic education for the betterment of G20 countries by news editor S. Joy. The program also highlights the views expressed by Orchids International School children.
Welcome listeners to another episode of G20 series. This program comes to you from the studios of All India Radio, Chennai. We are talking to students about G20. So in our studios, the kids of Orchid International School is here. So we are going to ask them about what they know about G20 and what they expect out of G20. So welcome students. So tell me about your school.
Okay, so my name is Akshayanidhi. I'm from Orchids International School, Thorepakam branch.
My name is Anirudh Pramod and I'm from Orchids the International School, Thorepakam.
Have you heard about skill development? Do something about it.
We have public speaking, which improves the skills of confident and communication skills as well.
And we also have Soch, where we learn how to make our mind sharper. And it's more about psychology, so you know how to prepare yourself for different tasks.
Have you heard about some international event is happening in our country?
So we heard about the G20 summit happening in Chennai, and our friends will explain more about that.
Now we will ask the students about how G20 is going to happen in India and what they think about the summit.
So now we're going to be telling the definition of what G20 is and the different countries that in the part of the summit. So first we're going to do a talk. So she's going to start, Tamanna.
Hey Rashmita, recently I've been hearing a lot about G20 and I was wondering if you knew anything about it.
Oh yes, I have heard about it too. I read about G20 and it turns out that it's an international body created in 1999 that promotes economic cooperation between industrialized and developing countries. The G20 began as a response to the economic crisis that started out in the late 1990s, but I'm not sure how it works.
Okay, let's ask someone about it.
Oh look, there's Uditi.
Hey guys, what are you discussing about?
Hey Uditi, we're discussing about G20, but we are confused on how it works. Do you know how it works?
Lucky for you guys, I'm aware about it. The G20 consists of two parallel tracks, the finance track and the Sherpa track. Finance ministers and central bank governors are in charge of the finance track, whereas the Sherpas lead the Sherpa track. The G20 process from the Sherpa side is coordinated by the Sherpas of member countries who are personal messengers of the leader. But I'm not quite aware what is Sherpa track and finance track.
I can help you out. Sherpa is the personal representative of a head or a state of government who prepares an international summit, such as G20 summits. It focuses on subjects including strengthening the G20 trade and investment mechanism, promoting global trade growth, and like you asked, G20 finance track discusses global economic issues through its meetings of finance ministers and central bank governors, their deputies, and various working group meetings.
Wow, that's very informative. Thanks, Vanchita.
No problem. I do indeed know a lot about G20, but I've always wondered how many countries participate in this summit.
I have heard in the news that as of 2023, there are 20 members in the summit. Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Italy, Indonesia, South Korea, Mexico, Japan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, and the European Union. And this year, the summit will be held by India.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Well, we got to know a lot about G20 and it was very fun.
Education is the key to empowerment of a person, development of a nation, and the path to a bright future. Every country in the world needs an educated population for its development. The whole world came to a standstill due to COVID. As a result, it was an unexpected turn of events in the lives of millions of students around the world, especially in the developing countries. As the COVID situation began to get better, the governments found technology as a method to provide education. Students from all strata of the society had to change from attending schools to attending classes through online from their homes. A child without education is like a bird without wings. In order to set the stage for education once again after normalcy is restored, nations around the world gathered together in the G20 platform and discussed various options to provide education universally. in the G20 summit held at Indonesia last year, 3 kinds of policies and programs were decided. Prevention methods, tackling root problems that can lead to early school leaving, intervention measures boosting the quality of education and providing targeted support to students, and compensation measures allowing school dropouts to re-enter education or training and gain qualifications was the measures which were recommended by the G20 countries. The aim was to achieve the targets of Sustainable Development Goal and reaffirm education as a fundamental human right of intrinsic value and as an instrument for achieving better and more equitable standards of living, social cohesion, national stability, and democracy. 3 orientations for future cooperation among G20 countries in the field of education and training emerged from the information received. One is to strengthen collaboration to accelerate progress on blended education and reduce educational poverty, collaborate to reimagine and transform education, contribute to international cooperation, and the Education 2030 agenda were all recommended during the last G20 summit held in Indonesia. To blend education and educational poverty, India had announced in the G20 that alternative academic calendar and bridge course will be introduced, and Diksha, e-Padashala, e-Yantra, free open source software for education, inclusiveness of children with special needs, National Digital Library, National Means Cum Merit Scholarship Scheme, National Repository of Open Educational Resources, Nishta, Sarva Siksha Abhiyan, Swayam for school education and teacher education, technology use and integration in higher education, national education policy, the national mission on education through information and communication technology and virtual labs. These were all introduced by India to make education as inclusive as possible. As India had introduced these type of initiatives, other countries also joined, and every country which is a part of G20 started contributing to their own development, and there was a discussion as to how to carry it forward. In order to make this feasible, the countries decided to recover together and recover stronger or reset the education. So for recovering together, the G20 countries decided to retain every learner to enable them to re-engage with learning in effective learning environments, starting with understanding each student's needs, assessing their learning level, and training and supporting teachers in using diagnostic, formative, and summative assessments in the light of adjustments to learning modalities and curricula. As there was a change from physical presence to online presence, the teachers needed a lot of skills to improve themselves to provide updated education. So in order to give that, the G20 countries decided to put their efforts to make the foundational skills and develop psychosocial health and well-being, including through gender-specific support, so that every child learns. When COVID had come, it came like a tsunami. So many families were affected, and children of every age were affected. In the sense, someone or the other in the family were not there, they were no more. These children were put into utmost turmoil all of a sudden. Many students lost their parents or someone in their family, and they had to deal with the psychological issues which were coming out of it, because they couldn't go to school, they couldn't go outside, and this had affected children of many ages, especially teenagers and children who were in primary schools. So all the governments decided to pool in their efforts in redeeming these type of children and also children with lesser privileges. In order to bridge the gap, certified courses were introduced digitally to catch up with all type of education. Apart from digital education, entrepreneurial certified courses were also introduced so that children will not suffer from economic crisis in their family. And apart from those initiatives, the G20 countries decided to engage senior members from the civil society and also provided apprenticeships and internships for these children who were in the completing tenure of their education. So in order to bring about a change in education, the G20 countries wanted to leverage global knowledge and data concerning the people who were affected were taken at a higher level, and education meetings were conducted frequently to support these type of misgivings in the society in all the G20 countries. Strengthen education and fix this COVID crisis, which was beyond their imagination. The G20 countries decided to give a universal quality standard to all the countries and all the children. So transforming their education systems was the best way to go forward. In order to bring about that, Education 2030 international commitments was decided. So this project was to give skill education to the students and also encourage them to be innovative, so that they don't need to spend that much of their lifetime in straining themselves to study hard. But in a way, it was a new initiative, so that innovation was promoted equally along with education. The G20 countries also decided to put a strategy to improve the skills of students as well as teachers, and also bridge the urban and rural divide. So in order to bring about that, multiple digital divides both inside and outside of schools, the government started introducing all types of technology to improve the education. So it began from the learning from the primary to the higher levels. To achieve the sustainable development goal, a strategic whole of government and whole of society approach to the skills, the G20 countries decided to reset the lifelong learning systems. The G20 skills strategy was developed jointly by the Employment and Education Working Groups, which is a reference framework and highlights the importance of developing adequate skills and lifelong learning as a guide for countries to move forward in their journey to achieve universal quality education and promote lifelong learning. This will also benefit individuals, enterprises, economies, and societies. International cooperation and solidarity, knowledge sharing, and peer learning was very critical for the development of all the countries, was decided at the G20 summit held in Indonesia last year. In this year, G20 Education Working Group is going to be held in Chennai IIT. This will basically be about concentrating on school education, higher education, technological education, and skill education. The G20 groups will be discussing at large about taking all these initiatives which was decided in Indonesia. Coming to the part of school education, it is the responsibility for everyone living in the society to provide information on what is happening in G20 discussions, and also give a thought to the school children who are there in primary and higher education, throw them a light on how the future education is going to be.
You were listening to an overview on the concept of holistic education for the betterment of G20 countries by news editor S. Joy. The program also highlights the views expressed by Orchids International School children.